Chapter 1869 Arrogance Without Bounds. Chapter 1869 Arrogance Without Bounds. Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden went to the 4th level via the transfer formation. As the victors of the tournament, the 4 still had some slight privileges. They were allowed to bring 1 or 2 people with them into the 4th level, but it was only limited to the tournament period. After it ended, they would have to leave within 3 days. Those who wanted to watch the tournament did not have that good luck. They could only pay to travel through the transfer formation. Not going to use it? With how colossal the space was in every level, would you manage to arrive in time if you ran? This transfer formation charged a star stone for each trip, and furthermore, it could not stop at the 4th level. You would have to return on the same day that you had come. Back and forth, that would be 2 star stones. It was rumored that alchemist Zi Cheng also had a share in the transfer formation. He really had a good business acumen. After arriving on the 4th level, Ling Han and his group had their accommodations arranged. At most, they could only stay here for 3 days. Additionally, the victors from the 2nd and 3rd levels would also be staying here. They were basically the natives of the city, and would directly return once they had finished the tournament. Meanwhile, the victors of the 4th level were not here. They would only appear on the next day. However, when it was midnight, a frightening aura rolled out, causing the 12 people who had qualified for the next round in this courtyard to wake and become alert. So powerful. They all opened their doors and exited, and saw that there was a man standing proudly in the skies. He was like a divine god, exuding an aura that ruled supreme over the whole world. ZH Zhao Qing Feng. Someone recognized this person, and called out his name, but his voice was actually trembling. Being able to qualify for the final rounds, which of them were not king tiers? But to actually tremble all over just by speaking a name, that showed how vicious Zhao Qingfeng was, and how frighteningly strong he was. Zhao Qingfeng. Clearly, there were a considerable number that had heard his name before. The other king tiers all frowned, looking wary. It was rumored that not only was Zhao Qingfeng overwhelmingly strong, he also had a cruel nature, and had a fondness for killing prodigies. One should pray not to become the target of his attention, or he would have to pray for good fortune after he left Alchemy City. Zhao Qingfeng clasped his hands behind his back, looking down on everyone from his lofty position, strong contempt in his eyes. A bunch of trash, really rubbish, not even capable of making me interested in making a move. Everyone couldn't help but feel furious. Which one of them was not a king tier? There were 1 or 2 in fact that were so strong that they had reached the level of emperor tier, and you actually said that they were trash and rubbish? Who could tolerate that? Dissatisfied? Zhao Qingfeng scoffed, stretched out a hand, and pressed down. Shio, 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 shio. Innumerable green rays of light shot down from the skies. Those were multiple green swords, and they were all formed from seals of great Tao, filling the skies in their descent. Wang, it was as if the great Tao itself was suppressing them, which was astonishingly frightening. Everyone hurriedly moved to parry the incoming attack. Peng, peng, peng. The whole courtyard was practically obliterated in an instant, and when the clouds of dust dispersed, the majority of people were lying on the ground. Even if there were a few that had not lain down, they still bore some injuries. A casual move, but it was capable of wounding over a dozen king tiers, and even emperor tiers, with a single strike. Just what kind of terrifying strength was this? This was Zhao Qingfeng. What was more frightening was that he was clearly already so strong, yet was still one of the 4 heavenly kings under Yang Xianlu, and Yang Xianlu, he was not even the heir of a 9 heavens celestial king tier. I already said that you were trash. Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. I came this time just to tell you all not to waste my time. Tomorrow, there will only be 1 tournament battle. His eyes were set on the only person who was still standing and unwounded in the area. Ling Han. Ling Han had already drawn Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower. Ling Han? Zhao Qingfeng asked calmly, 2 balls of fire erupting in his eyes. That was a blazing fighting spirit. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The other party actually knew his name. He also looked back at him. Though he was looking upwards, he had a certain pride about his posture, and was not at the slightest bit of advantage in terms of aura. That's right. I am Ling Han, he stated evenly. This Zhao Qingfeng was really very strong. Perhaps he was even stronger than Ling Han had been before he had been tempered by the celestial king tier flames. But now, Ling Han had absolute confidence in himself. Ling Han did not dare underestimate any prodigy in this world, but he similarly would still have absolute confidence in himself. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a grin, and declared, "You are very interesting. Tomorrow will be the finals between you and me." Was this reasonable? There were a total of 16 people who had qualified for the final rounds, and 8 would win, then 4 out of that, and then the last 2 would remain. Only then would the final battle be held, and now he had directly skipped over 3 days of battles. Wasn't he afraid that alchemist Zi Cheng would seek him out for an accounting? Though Ling Han had never met this alchemist before, he was already capable of saying for certain that he was definitely an old money grubber. Let's talk about this later, Ling Han said carelessly. Whether it was fighting slowly all the way to the finals, or immediately beginning the battle, he was unafraid. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes swept over him, and he said, "If you people do not automatically forfeit tomorrow, then none of you need even dream of returning alive. Whatever I, Zhao Qingfeng, have said, I promise it will be done." He was arrogant enough, domineering enough, and haughty enough, but he had enough strength too. Everyone was silent. At first, some people had had some hope, but just now, they had been defeated with a single move from Zhao Qingfeng, which naturally was a blow strong enough to destroy all their confidence. In any case, they couldn't possibly win, so what did it matter if they retreated earlier or later? That was Zhao Qingfeng, and they could not afford to trifle with him. The unluckier one was Ling Han. He had become Zhao Qingfeng's target, and he would definitely be killed tomorrow. Ling Han, I anticipate the battle tomorrow. You definitely must not disappoint me, or else. Zhao Qingfeng only looked deeply at Ling Han before leaving with a flutter of his sleeve. This arrogance of his had reached a completely different level. Ling Han propped up his chin and reflected on himself. Had he been too modest? You see, Zhao Qingfeng was only the subordinate of a holy son, yet could actually be arrogant to this extent in Alchemy City. Tomorrow, he was going to crush this guy. Ling Han made his decision. Who cared how freakish a prodigy Yang Xianlu was? That was something to be considered later. Now he very much disliked the look of Zhao Qingfeng, and if he did not crush him, irritation would continue to be stifled in his heart. The courtyard was razed to the ground. However, the other 15 people had no plans to continue the tournament, so they were not so concerned. Some immediately left, while others were still not willing to give up, and placed their bets on Ling Han. They hoped to see Ling Han make a great comeback, and suppress Zhao Qingfeng. Ultimately, this night had still passed. Early in the morning of the second day, Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden set out, heading to the arena here. It was very close. What, all the other contestants have forfeited, and now only 2 are left. In the arena, one of the persons in charge couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat as he listened to the report from his subordinate. The tickets had already been sold, yet such a problem had actually cropped up now. Zhao Qingfeng, he exclaimed through gritted teeth. Would you die if you fought a few more rounds? To actually threaten the other contestants so that they would take their own initiative to forfeit. Thankfully, there was at least one that had stayed behind. Otherwise, after working hard for 10 days to half a month, the finals would have actually fizzled out. That would really be too much of a joke. It can't be helped, we can only directly follow up with the finals, this person in charge said with a sigh. Though Zhao Qingfeng was despicable, who would dare to directly reprimand him? As he was a person that had walked out from an 8th heaven celestial king tier level force, even a finger of his was incredibly precious. Moreover, he was also Yang Xianlu's follower, and as the saying went, when one beat a dog, one had to answer to its master. That was a supreme genius that would definitely become a celestial king. Who dared to offend him? I hope that this Ling Han is not disappointing, and will teach Zhao Qingfeng a good lesson, this person in charge exclaimed, but then he shook his head. This was an impossible feat. Even the holy sons of celestial king tier level sects had all been easily defeated by Zhao Qingfeng, so how could Ling Han possibly defy the heavens? Chapter 1870 Final Battle. Chapter 1870, Final Battle. On the spectators' seats, when the Master of Ceremonies announced that the final battle would directly begin today, the whole martial arena instantly erupted in a storm of protest. What the heck was this? It had been agreed that they would be able to watch for 4 days consecutively, so why had it been shortened to a single day? You guys had just decided the winner behind closed doors, right? The others fought earnestly all the way here, and in the end, they were disqualified for no reason. But the Master of Ceremonies also said that the other contestants had all forfeited on their own initiative, and they could not force them to fight, after all, right? Thus, whether you were in agreement or otherwise, you would have to accept this result. There would only be one battle, and that was Ling Han against Zhao Qingfeng. Ling Han? Lu Xianming murmured. Could it be that it was that person? It couldn't be so coincidental, right? Young Master Lu. Sun Dong approached. What is it? Lu Xianming shook his head, and thought that they were only 2 people who shared the same name. After all, there were really too many people in the celestial realm, so it was not unusual for 2 people to share the same name. Meanwhile, Sun Dong was almost prostrating himself in admiration of Zhao Qingfeng. He said that he would directly fight the final battle, and he was really going to fight the final battle. All the others had been scared into flight. He was really too domineering. In this battle against Ling Han, that damn guy would definitely be crushed into dust by Zhao Qingfeng. After waiting for so many days, the moment for his revenge had finally come. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun also had a feeling of exultation. Today, Ling Han was definitely going to be defeated. Initially, it was still possible for Ling Han to stay a few more days on this stage, but today is the final battle, and he is facing Zhao Qingfeng directly, then that would mean undoubted defeat. He spoke frankly with assurance, as if he was Zhao Qingfeng himself. However, there was no one stoking the fires today, because everyone had heard about Zhao Qingfeng's past deeds. Just some time ago, he had directly forced a few holy sons and holy daughter from several celestial king tier level sects to leave, and 3 of the victors of the 4th level had also forfeited. That was all because they were wary of Zhao Qingfeng. This person was so strong that he had reached the level of destroying worlds. No matter how strong Ling Han was, he could only lose in resentment faced with Zhao Qingfeng. The only question here was exactly how many moves Ling Han could survive. 3, 5, 10? And he still dared to fight. His courage was really admirable. After the Master of Ceremonies blabbered for a while, this final battle that was much anticipated yet taking place ahead of time was finally going to begin. The 2 contestants came on stage. Suddenly, an expression of shock appeared on Lu Xianming's face. He had seen Ling Han. It really was this guy. He couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. This world was really too small, wasn't it? Not even a year had passed, and he had met Ling Han again. No. Lu Xianming immediately thought in his heart. He could not allow Ling Han to die at Zhao Qingfeng's hands. Firstly, he still owed his life to the former, and secondly, Ling Han's strength was very powerful, and he needed this kind of helper. He would step out to stop the battle after Ling Han was defeated. With his identity, Zhao Qingfeng would have to give him some face. In this manner, he would repay Ling Han's kindness, and could take advantage of the chance to recruit him too. What a great idea. Sun Dong did not notice the changing expressions on Lu Xianming's face. After he saw Ling Han, his whole head was filled with the tragic scene of having his *s pierced, and he wanted nothing more than to devour Ling Han's flesh and drink his blood. Begin. The Master of Ceremonies waved a hand, and left the stage to these 2 young prodigies. Zhao Qingfeng stood, clasping his hands behind his back. He set his eyes on Ling Han, and said, "Not bad. At least you have some courage. I thought you would be a coward as well." Ling Han chuckled, and said, "If I left, who would beat you to mush?" Your courage is something to be praised. I hope your strength will not disappoint me." Zhao Qingfeng was not angered, but instead laughed. His only fear was that Ling Han was not strong enough, and could not give him a strong enough stimulation, arousing all his potential. The longer he stayed at the 4th severance, the lower the chances were for breaking through to the 5th severance. The accumulation of power over time was of no use at all. Instead, it would only cause a contrary effect. Ling Han said, "I, too, hope that you are strong. Otherwise, stepping on a weakling would be something very boring. Arrogant, but there is no meaning to it." Zhao Qingfeng raised his right hand, and a green halo of light appeared in the palm of his hand. Then, a green sword appeared within the green halo, and he gripped it in his hand. Zhao Qingfeng showed a cruel expression. For this feast, he had already waited for a very long time, and now he was impatient to finally enjoy it. Cruelly killing a prodigy that was close to his equal would endlessly arouse his Dao heart. That was right, he had cultivated the regulation of slaughter. Of all the kings in the world, Qingfeng is the strongest. Zhao Qingfeng stated calmly, an indescribable pride clear in his tone. Ling Han was surprised. This guy was really shameless. Of all the kings in the world, you actually dared to call yourself the strongest. Where had you gotten such courage from? It should be known that even Yang Xianlu did not have the right to call himself the strongest, what more you? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh out loud, and shook his head. You actually dare laugh at me? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly, and the green blade in his hand rose, striking out at the empty air in front of Ling Han. Shua, a flash of sword qi swept out, turning into a sword that was 30,000 meters long, and slashing harshly at Ling Han. He was arrogant, but he was indeed strong. This strike had gathered supreme great Dao, as if it could slice open the heavens and earth. As expected of a prodigy from the eternal prosperity sect. On the spectators' seats, a few powerful figures were watching the battle. They were all ascending origin tier elites, the strongest beneath Celestial King tier. In their eyes, to say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng and Ling Han, even if Yang Xianlu had come, he would only be a child. No matter how strong your potential was, that was a matter of the future. How could a severing mundane tier possibly gain the serious notice of ascending origin tiers? His battle prowess is indeed strong enough. The powerful figures made their assessment. This brat has already cultivated the severing mundane tier to perfection. I do not believe that he is incapable of breaking through to the dividing soul tier with his talent. Unless, these powerful figures all exchanged looks, and could see a sliver of shock in each other's eyes. They had thought of a legend. It really was just a legend. At least, they had never heard of anyone who had successfully accomplished it. Above the fourth severance, there was still the fifth severance. Whichever Celestial King tier sect this boy went to, he would be qualified to become a holy son. However, he still chose to become Yang Xianlu's follower. Perhaps it is also for the sake of completing the fifth severance. These powerful figures were all guessing, and a hint of admiration appeared in their expressions. Even they were slightly stunned by Zhao Qingfeng's resolve. However, with this, old Zi Cheng would definitely be stomping his feet in fury after causing him to earn a lot less profit for no reason. A shorty that had his hair tied in countless braids suddenly said with a laugh. Ha 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 ha. The other powerful figures all laughed loudly. Thinking of that money grubber look of alchemist Zi Cheng, they really anticipated the expression he would have on his face when he heard of the news. Amidst the laughter of these mighty figures, this flash of sword Qi Zhao Qingfeng had shot out blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han shot out a fist. Peng, the regulations of fire entwined around his fist, and his punch landed on the sword Qi. The sword Qi crumbled instantly. However, Ling Han was also forced into a retreat by the shockwave caused by this clash, all the way until he had reached the boundary of the arena, and then his retreat was stopped by the wall behind him. With a bang, he had crashed so hard into the wall that it shook. What a frightening strike. It was only a careless wave, and it already possessed such might. Ling Han frowned slightly. He was not inferior to his opponent in talent, but because there was a gap of a minor level between them, with third severance against fourth severance, and added with the fact that Zhao Qingfeng was also close to monarch tier level, he had fallen into a disadvantage. This is fun. Let's battle, then. Chapter 1871, You have disappointed me too much. Chapter 1871, You have disappointed me too much. Ling Han released a battle cry, and stepped strongly with his feet. Peng, his whole person instantly shot out like a sharp arrow, charging back over to Zhao Qingfeng. Physical power added with origin power was unleashed through regulations of lightning, and Ling Han's speed was indescribably fast. He raised his fist, and harshly threw a punch at Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng was slightly surprised. While Ling Han's battle prowess was inferior to his, he had not been injured even when he had taken this strike from him head-on. This kind of defense caused even him to be slightly impressed. However, this was the prodigy that he anticipated. If Ling Han was only so mediocre that he would be killed with a few moves from him, how could he possibly arouse his Dao heart then? He raised his sword in a sweep, and sliced out at Ling Han. Wang, the sword exuded a terrifying cold light, and there were patterns of great Dao flickering. It was a pseudo-celestial tool by itself, and added with the powerful martial intent of Zhao Qingfeng, an endless might was instantly unleashed. Ling Han shouted loudly, and pushed the power of lightning to its pinnacle. Peng, a fierce clash, and he was once again sent flying. However, his physique was really too strong. Additionally, the right hand that had directly clashed with was wrapped in regulations of lightning, and he was not injured by the pseudo-celestial tool. This time, Zhao Qingfeng was really stunned. Previously, he had only delivered a flash of sword qi, so it was very normal that Ling Han could have taken it head-on without any injury, but now? That was really a genuine strike, and there was also the qi of slaughter that he had cultivated instilled in this strike, possessing incredibly frightening destructive power. And even with that, Ling Han was not injured. In fact, his fist hadn't even been scraped. Zhao Qingfeng was trembling slightly. However, it was not because of fear, but rather excitement. A good opponent was incredibly rare. If he could not find a suitable opponent, he would even battle the other 3 heavenly kings under Yang Xianlu to death. Only then could he completely arouse his full fighting spirit, and have a battle that was brilliant to the extreme. He naturally did not want that. If Yang Xianlu was angered, even he would shiver in fear. And now, an outsider had similarly aroused his fighting spirit. This naturally was best. It could refine his Dao heart, and he would also not have to anger Yang Xianlu. This was practically a gift that the heavens had bestowed on him. To repay you, I will ensure that you die in incredible agony so that this world will remember your anguish. Zhao Qingfeng stuck out his tongue and licked the blade of his sword. Even his eyes were slightly dazed, but his frightening aura surged out of his body like a tsunami, which also made him incredibly dangerous. Cultivating regulation of slaughter, he would not even remember who he was when he went nuts. His only thought was killing. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. This was definitely the strongest opponent among his peers that he had encountered in his life. The likes of Zihei Bingyun and Luo Changfeng weren't even qualified to pick up Zhao Qingfeng's shoes. He released a battle cry, and the divine demon sword was summoned. Channeling the power of lightning, he clashed with Zhao Qingfeng. The 2 young prodigies' fighting spirit blazed, and they brandished their swords in a head-on clash with the other. Ding, ding, ding. Crisp sounds rang out continuously, and as they moved, they turned into loud blasts of thunder, deafening with their volume. Every time they clashed, it was a clash of great Dao. A dazzling light appeared, which then turned into a terrifying explosion. If this had not been the arena, where there were protective formations in place, it would definitely have been razed to the ground already, and also caused massive damage to the spectators. Bewitching maiden Ru couldn't help but ball her hands into fists. She had heard of Zhao Qingfeng's reputation. He was doubtlessly a prodigy, and was also a maniac at the same time. Practically no one that he had set his eyes on could escape the fate of being killed. Though she was angered by Ling Han's lack of sensitivity, they had fought together on the same side a few times, and a certain level of amiable relations had naturally developed between them. She had no wish to see Ling Han die in Zhao Qingfeng's hands. But Zhao Qingfeng was too strong. He was completely suppressing Ling Han in the battle. Though Ling Han's defenses were indeed very strong, he could not hold on for long. There would come a time that his defenses would be penetrated. Her heart became anxious, and her fists also became more tightly clenched. Meanwhile, Sun Dong became excited. At the same time, he was also slightly impatient. It was clear that Zhao Qingfeng completely had the upper hand, so why was he still unable to kill Ling Han? Someone who had the same thoughts as he was Cheng Fengyun. He wanted nothing more than to go into the arena and give Zhao Qingfeng a hand. Ling Han had fallen into a disadvantage. Everyone could see that, and with every clash, just when everyone thought that Ling Han would not be able to hold on any longer, he always managed to stand back up like nothing had happened. This guy was also a freak. The cruel smile at Zhao Qingfeng's lips became more and more pronounced. He liked this kind of prodigy that had powerful toughness. Only then would he have enough fun through killing him, especially when his blade had sliced open Ling Han's neck and chest. Seeing that blood-splattered scene, his Dao heart would also be refined to the pinnacle in an instant, and he would be able to easily push open the barriers to his cultivation level. Be stronger so that all the blood burning in his body would blaze even stronger. Only when he killed Ling Han could he open the doors to the fifth severance. Ling Han seemed to be in a precarious position, but only he himself knew that he was not in the slightest danger at all. The strength of his physique had practically rushed up to the level of level 3 pseudo-divine metal. This meant that if anyone wanted to wound him, he would have to push his battle prowess up to the level of Yang Soul, at least. Fifth severance could be treated like Yang Soul, but was Zhao Qingfeng in the fifth severance? No way. What a joke. The reason why he had fallen into a disadvantage was firstly that he was a cultivation level lower, and secondly because he had only used the regulations of lightning. There were many regulations he had grasped, but if they were ranked in terms of power, the first place naturally belonged to regulations of fire, second was water, and lightning was only third. As for space, time, slaughter, and so on, he had only just barely touched on these areas. Using the regulations that were ranked third to face an opponent whose strength was close to his, wasn't it very natural that he had fallen into a disadvantage? Ling Han, if you only have this little bit of strength, your blood will definitely be spilt within 3 moves. Zhao Qingfeng's whole body was surging with a murderous aura. He had already boosted his regulation of slaughter to the pinnacle. The present him was a god of slaughter. Ling Han humphed. He, too, wanted to use the opponent to open the doors to the fourth severance. Otherwise, he would have directly drawn on the strongest power of a fire divine fetus. That destructive power that would explode in an instant was incredibly frightening. I already said not to disappoint me, but you only have this bit of strength. It's not enough. Not enough. Not enough. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes were bloodshot. Being able to withstand strong attacks was still not enough to completely arouse his murderous heart. He roared. Wang, his sword trembled slightly, and a streak of light flashed past. This pseudo-celestial tool instantly exploded with an incredible blaze of light, as if a blunt weapon had suddenly been sharpened into a blade. Shua, as the sword struck, a streak of blood actually spewed from Ling Han's body. Thankfully, it was only his skin that was scraped, and it was not a bone-deep wound. His strongest part was naturally his bones. They had reached close to the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal, but his skin, blood, and flesh was not as freakish as that. However, being able to split Ling Han's skin with a strike, the force behind this strike was really extremely strong. You think I have just cultivated the regulation of slaughter? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly. Wrong, I am a bronze divine fetus, metal element. This is my original elemental alignment, and also my strongest regulations. No wonder. The murderous aura of regulation of slaughter was filled with endless destructive power, and the air of sharp metal similarly was focused on offensive. With the two compounded together, he was naturally capable of conquering every obstacle. You only have that little bit of strength. This is too sad, and to think I thought of you as a rival. I held myself back for so many days to finally make my move. You have disappointed me too much. Chapter 1872, Showing Off Their Respective Strength. Chapter 1872, Showing Off Their Respective Strength. On the spectators' seats, a round of cheers suddenly rose up. For ordinary spectators, they were not concerned who would win or lose. As long as they could see an exciting battle, they would be satisfied. After spending so much money, what they wanted to see was blood spilling and flesh tearing, and now Ling Han's blood was finally spilt, which naturally caused their emotions to climax instantly. Kill! 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 Some were shouting with bloodshot eyes. That frantic madness was no less than that of Zhao Qingfeng himself, if not more. Sun Dong also belonged to them. As he yelled, he was still waving his arms in excitement. Pa! Lu Xianming immediately delivered a slap at him. Sun Dong's whole person spun around on the spot from the impact. Then, he was baffled, and asked in confusion, "Holy Sun, why did you hit me?" He felt very innocently wronged. Lu Xianming humphed. As one of superior status, did he have to give his subordinates an explanation? "If you can't discern my body language, you still think of becoming my trusted aide? Idiot." Although Sun Dong had a fondness for women, he was a very clever man. When he realized that Lu Xianming was showing a strong displeasure, he hurriedly murmured his apologies. As for the reason, that could be discussed later. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun was even more excited. Because of Ling Han, he had suffered a lot. The noble young master of Cheng clan actually had to eat rock, slap himself, and even run naked. How could that be endured? After being repressed for 10 days, his emotions exploded in an instant, which naturally made him exhilarated to the extreme. "Kill! Zhao Qingfeng! Kill!" he shouted, his face flushed red. Even the veins below his skin were popping, and it was very possible that his heart would explode due to overexcitement. Bewitching Maiden Ru was even more anxious, and thought, why has this idiot not admitted defeat yet? Does he want to be beaten to death? Why are you being so stubborn? To say nothing of her, even Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a little uncertain. Though she knew Ling Han's strength very well, Zhao Qingfeng's battle prowess was too vicious, and he had indeed wounded Ling Han with a single strike. She couldn't help but worry, her pretty face showing her anxiety. "Brother, this brat can't hold on for much longer," Shantian Wu said excitedly. Under his brother's abuse of authority, he no longer dared to make a move on Ling Han. However, that did not mean that he did not hate Ling Han anymore. Now, as he watched Ling Han suffer an injury, it was as if he had been injected with adrenaline. That was how excited he was. Meanwhile, Shantian Ju was much more reserved. He smiled slightly, yet in his heart, he thought that all this was only a matter of course. Zhao Qingfeng was too strong, and even the holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier-level sects had been instantly defeated by him. At most, Ling Han could only be the holy son from a celestial king tier-level force. Faced with Zhao Qingfeng, it was definite that he would be outmatched. To last for so long before finally sustaining injuries was already very much beyond his expectations. Even those powerful figures nodded their heads continuously. Zhao Qingfeng's strength had already reached the peak stage of the severing mundane tier, and had in fact surpassed that. Because there was a large vacuum of battle prowess between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier, the present Zhao Qingfeng was within this vacuum. How could he not be strong? The spectators' cheers seemed capable of crumbling mountains and overturning seas. There were practically not many here that knew Ling Han, so they naturally would not be cheering for him. They were all leaning in favor of the elite. Zhao Qingfeng! Zhao Qingfeng! Zhao Qingfeng! Everyone all cheered together, as if wanting to shatter the sky itself. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a menacing grin, and raised the sword to level, aiming straight at Ling Han. "If you can't completely ignite my Dao heart, what meaning is there for you to continue living? Just die!" He roared, and charged towards Ling Han. Scram! Ling Han roared furiously. Brandishing his sword, he received the incoming attack. The brightness of lightning exploded madly, and fiery flames were still burning within. He, too, had channeled his divine sword, and used the regulations of fire. He kept feeling that Zhao Qingfeng had not used his full strength. Thus, he, too, had only channeled the regulations of lightning all this while, exchanging blows with the other. Now, since the other had revealed his trump card, he, too, began to unleash his true battle prowess. "You want to break through? So do I, so let's just see who will become the stepping stone for the other." Boom! The two swords clashed, and a brilliant light surged out from the point where the blades clashed. Very soon, a pinpoint of light turned into a massive ball of light, which then turned into a terrifying explosion, sweeping out in all directions. Peng! 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 All around the arena, multiple formation patterns lit up, blocking the shock wave that had gone berserk. Even so, the spectators were all dazed, and looked completely beside themselves. Too strong, really too strong. Was this really the strength that a severing mundane tear should have? What was more frightening was that Ling Han actually turned his dire situation around. His whole body was burning with fiery flames, bestowing his brilliance on the world like a sun god. In this exchange, it was still Ling Han that was at a disadvantage, but it was no longer one-sided. This was a worthy battle. On the spectators' seats, the powerful figures all closed their mouths, sinking into silence. After a long while, the shorty with braided hair finally said, "This brat is still only a third severance peak stage." Ling Han's strength naturally would not be taken to heart by these powerful figures, but the problem here was that there was a third severance peak stage cultivator that had actually also stepped into the vacuum between severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier. This was really too exaggerating. Then when you advanced into the fourth severance, could it be that you would be able to match the dividing soul tier? Matching dividing soul tier is impossible. Even Yang Xianlu could not possibly fight a dividing soul tier opponent while he is still at the fourth severance. He would only be able to defeat all other severing mundane tiers, a powerful figure spoke up. Unless he can advance into the fifth severance, several mighty figures said at the same time. But when they said this, they all shook their heads. This was a possibility that was close to zero. Hihi, since you all don't have a high opinion of this kid, I will take him as my disciple then, the shorty with braided hair said. Old geezer who, the height of battle prowess is one story, but what does that have to do with taking disciples? An elder with a tall build hurriedly jumped in. This brat, I, too, have the interest to take him as my disciple. I, on the other hand, do not want to take him as my disciple. However, I would like to take him in as a son-in-law, another powerful figure said. Suddenly, all these big shots were arguing with red faces. Ha 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 ha, this only makes it interesting. Zhao Qingfeng was not stunned because of Ling Han's aggressive counterattack. Instead, he looked delighted. Only if Ling Han was strong enough could he completely arouse his murderous heart. Die. He charged over, laughing madly. He brandished his sword in a swipe, and delivered millions and millions of flashes of sword chi that filled the entire arena. This was the range of his sword chi. Because he was a metal element divine fetus, he was born with an affinity with metal, and could easily manipulate it at his slightest whim. And now, all the metal element of the heaven and earth had turned into sword chi, and added with his control of regulations at the fourth severance, this destructive power was unimaginable. Sure, all the sword chi shot out simultaneously, wanting to turn Ling Han into a beehive. Shio, shio, shio. The sword chi descended together, turning into a massive ball of blades, and Ling Han was completely drowned in it. Is he dead yet? On the spectators' seats, everyone was holding their breath. This kind of battle was really too intense, too exciting, and they had even forgotten to breathe. Boom. Suddenly, a pillar of flame burst out from within the ball of blades, melting the ball of blades with its heat. Ling Han was standing proudly there, completely unwounded. Gasp. The spectators all exclaimed in shock. This was a little too strong, wasn't it? This Ling Han, who exactly was he? Could it be that he was the holy son from some celestial king tier-level sect, and had deliberately concealed his identity? Yet Zhao Qingfeng only laughed maniacally, and pounced, brandishing his sword in a swift slash. His murderous heart was blazing. Ling Han's strength had already caused his killing intent to completely boil over, and now the only thing left was to deliver the killing strike on Ling Han so he could be completely refined. Chapter 1873, Frightening Destructive Power. Chapter 1873, Frightening Destructive Power. Ling Han released a battle cry. The divine demon's sword swept out in a slash, clashing harshly with Zhao Qingfeng without the slightest show of weakness. The two young elites were utterly brilliant, earnestly releasing their brightness, which was strong enough to dazzle the galaxies, and last for eternity. Some holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier-level sects had not left, and were all dazed by this scene. Then, they paled in dejection. They could not compare, they really could not compare. While they, too, were emperor tiers, compared with these two, It was like one had just barely started, while the other had already reached the apex. They were on completely two different levels. What was more unacceptable and more unimaginable to them was that this was actually not the strongest of the severing mundane tier. Firstly, Ling Han was still a third severance peak stage. After he entered into the fourth severance, his battle prowess would definitely increase tremendously. Secondly, above these two people, there was another mountain that could not be moved. Yang Xianlu. Just how strong would he be then? Ling Han's excitement was aroused with the battle. Using the immovable deity metal body, he manifested 6 arms, and began to channel even more celestial techniques. Mere party tricks. Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. Though he was not a holy son, he was stronger than 99 and of all holy sons, and had a grasp of even more celestial techniques. His figure blurred, and his whole body suddenly enlarged to 10 times the original size, and harshly stomped on Ling Han with a single foot. This stomp was like a bronze mountain descending, and what was more astonishing was that there were countless seals flickering on the sole of his foot, and that was what was the most deadly about it. Is that right? Ling Han smirked, and lightly pressed with one arm. Banish. All of a sudden, that massive figure of Zhao Qingfeng vanished. But it was only an instant, and that massive foot had shattered the space, reappearing abruptly. Then, it was Zhao Qingfeng's gigantic figure. He clearly was only 15 to 18 meters tall, yet it was as if he was capable of supporting both heaven and earth. An iron fist flew over, directly aiming for Zhao Qingfeng's face. Ling Han was already long waiting for him. Humph! Zhao Qingfeng was not flustered at all. His whole head of black hair danced wildly, turning into sharp spikes that pierced towards Ling Han's left eye. You gave me a punch, and I would pay you back with a single sword strike. Ling Han did not even think of dodging or withdrawing his punch. This punch flew in a straight course, and he only closed his left eye, and slightly leaned his head to the side. Peng! This punch and sword strike both landed solidly. This was the first time Zhao Qingfeng had been struck by Ling Han. Under the blast of this fist, his whole person retreated a few dozen steps back, and with every step back, it had forcefully created a deep footprint on the ground. However, there were protective formations here, so the ground under his feet returned back to normal in a mere instant. A fist-shaped groove had shockingly appeared on Zhao Qingfeng's face, and what was strange was that his skin hadn't broken, nor was there any blood spilt. It was as if his fist had punched a metallic object, forcefully causing it to curve inwards. Bronze divine fetus truly had strong defenses. On the other side, the hair spikes had pricked Ling Han's face, but could not penetrate it at all. They only swiped past his face, leaving behind bloody marks that started from the corner of the left eye all the way to the right corner of the lips on Ling Han's face. Ling Han wiped his face. There was some blood on his hand. He channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and the bloody marks on his face instantly became lighter and recovered. This strike. At the moment, it was unclear who was at the upper hand. I want to kill you more and more, Zhao Qingfeng declared, the groove on his face slowly filling back out, and he, too, very quickly regained his original appearance. However, there was still the shape of a fist left behind. Clearly, his defenses could not compare with Ling Han's. This was natural. Firstly, Zhao Qingfeng was only a divine fetus, and what level was the indestructible Heaven's Scroll at? Secondly, a metal element divine fetus was more focused on the offensive in the first place, and was not so much geared towards defense. Thirdly, it was mainly because his cultivation level was higher. Otherwise, it definitely would not have been so easy for him to recover. Ling Han took in a deep breath. After battling to this moment, he had no choice but to admit that the other party was the strongest opponent he had faced since entering into the celestial realm. If it had been before he had been tempered by the immortal flames, and their cultivation level had been completely equal, it would have been really hard to say who would be coming out the victor. And now, Ling Han could still manage a tie while his cultivation level was still a minor level lower, which showed fully the benefits being tempered by immortal flames had brought him. It had really strengthened him too much. If he couldn't even deal with Zhao Qingfeng now, what right did he have to compare to Yang Xianlu? Furthermore, Yang Xianlu might not be the strongest severing mundane tier in the celestial realm, either. Just come at me, Ling Han's fighting spirit blazed. He was the same as the Rain Emperor. They were both the type to become stronger with battle, and they could gain inspiration from battle too, breaking through in an instant. After this battle, his confidence and first severance would definitely improve to a new height, and there would be hopes for him to break through to the fourth severance. I will send you on your way. Zhao Qingfeng smiled coldly, stretching out his hand, and then flipping it over. Murderous shadow. Xiu, xiu, xiu. Suddenly, countless flashes of murderous aura surged out from the palm of his hand, turning into multiple human figures. All of them looked exactly like Zhao Qingfeng, and even the aura they exuded was not different in the slightest. This time, everyone was astounded. One Zhao Qingfeng was already so hard to deal with, and now with 1, 2, 3, 4. There were already several dozen Zhao Qingfengs. Then wouldn't he be invincible in the severing mundane tier? He was called Invincible Qingfeng, and it was definitely not bragging. He truly was very strong. Ling Han's eyes swept over them. The Eye of Truth was already long since obsolete. He could not tell what difference these figures of murderous aura had with the original at all. He was not concerned, though, because he was sure that his physique was definitely invincible in the severing mundane tier. Even when meeting a fifth severance, as long as he had advanced into the fourth severance, he would be qualified to fight the former. If he had advanced into the fifth severance, then he could ignore even Yang Soul tier elites. Come on then. Zhao Qingfeng manifested a total of 99 doppelgangers, and added with the original, they just happened to total 100. He laughed, pointing his sword at Ling Han, and the other 99 doppelgangers did the same movement at the same time. Ultimate strike. He charged towards Ling Han, the murderous shadows blasting together. The light of Great Dao shone brilliantly. This strike was a perfect merging of the regulation of slaughter and regulations of metal. Ling Han smiled calmly, and struck out with a palm. Wang, boundless coldness suddenly arose. The source power of water activated. This was the Shenyin source water, a celestial king tier-level entity. Merely in terms of level, there was not a single object or person that could reign over it. Freezing 1,000 miles. Ka. This coldness was too terrifying. It seeped out to the sides of the arena, and activated the protective formations, creating snowflakes on the formation patterns. At first, the attacks of severing mundane tiers naturally were no issue, and could be easily dispelled by the formations. But who asked for this to be Ling Han's source power, and a source water of the heaven and earth to be showing its might? Pa. The ice shattered, actually destroying a sliver of the formation patterns. Though it was practically indiscernible, a great many powerful figures all paled. You fucking freak. This formation was ascending origin tier in level, and a severing mundane tier brat actually managed to destroy a bit of it. Though it was a pitifully small portion, what did this mean? Ling Han had the ability to kill ascending origin tiers. Of course, the prerequisite was that the ascending origin tier elite did not resist, and only channeled regulations to protect himself. In that case, after Ling Han spent a horribly long time, he would be able to slowly disintegrate these regulations, and then kill the ascending origin tier elite. This was only a theoretical possibility. Whether it was replenishing the ascending origin tier's regulations for defense, or a casual strike, it was enough to turn all of Ling Han's efforts into waste and kill him immediately, but merely this sliver of possibility was already an inconceivable thing. Gods, just what kind of monster was this? Chapter 1874, Strongest Attack. Chapter 1874, Strongest Attack. Under the ice, the movements of the majority of Zhao Qingfeng slowed, and only the original was practically unaffected, continuing to launch his offensive on Ling Han. But without the support of many murderous shadows, the might of this attack was only that. With a strike from Ling Han, Peng, Zhao Qingfeng was sent backwards. Competing with doppelgangers, come then, Ling Han exclaimed lowly, and his life force was unleashed, 3 battle beasts walking out from within his body. Flames turned into the vermilion bird, water took the form of the azure dragon, and lightning became Zhu Li, and they were all immortal beasts of immortal beasts. Comparatively speaking, Zhu Li was considerably smaller. It could not be helped the source power of lightning was not qualified to compete with the nine heavens flame and Shenyan's source water in a contest of source powers. The three battle beasts appeared, and instantly roared simultaneously, exuding an aura that could suppress all the heavens for eternity. My gods! On the spectators' seats, someone grabbed their head, shivering uncontrollably. Are these really battle beasts that have been manifested? Why do I feel like they could insta-kill me with a single blow? Me too, someone beside him said in a shaking voice. The moment these three battle beasts appeared, at least 99% severing mundane tears trembled, and even Emperor tears paled, feeling a humiliation that they could not accept. They couldn't even match these three battle beasts. It was enough that they could not match Ling Han. Both he and Zhao Qingfeng were super freaks, but this was only a technique that Ling Han had cast, and they couldn't hold up against even that, which was something they could not accept at all. Finally, Zhao Qingfeng looked serious. He, too, discovered the might of these three battle beasts. They were really very strong, and a coldness that made it seem as if he could be killed at any second rose up in him. However, this kind of coldness did not make him afraid in the slightest. On the other hand, he became incredibly excited. When he went berserk, his only wish was to kill, whether the one being killed was another or himself. Of course, as he was alive even now, it would only be others that were killed. Ha 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 ha. He laughed madly, multiple seals of great Tao appearing on his body. His fighting spirit had taken solid form, and soared straight into the skies. Materialize, he shouted, and the 99 murderous shadows turned back into murderous aura, which then materialized into a gigantic human figure. Charge! He charged towards Ling Han, while the murderous aura figure met the three battle beasts. Boom! 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 By now, the battle was divided into two different areas, with Ling Han battling Zhao Qingfeng, while the three battle beasts were fighting the murderous aura figure to death. The battles on both sides were incredibly intense. Blood splattered. Even if Ling Han's physique was incredibly tough, it was still inevitable that his skin would be split, but with the toughness of his godly bones, these were only light injuries. Zhao Qingfeng was not much better off. The bronze physique's defenses also had a limit, and after this limit was surpassed, he, too, would suffer injury. The two supreme prodigies were both covered with wounds. They had really met a match. It was rare that they could encounter an opponent that could allow them to go all out in battle like this. While they could also go all out in a battle against dividing soul tier, they would not have that feeling of pressure as if they were walking on a tightrope, so that would not have the slightest benefit in improving their battle prowess. I have found your weakness. Zhao Qingfeng bared his mouth in a grin. He delivered a series of stabs, the angle of his strikes incredibly tricky, intending to pierce through the boneless parts of Ling Han's body, and damage Ling Han's internal organs. After fighting for so long, he was naturally clear that the toughness of Ling Han's bones was not something that he could breach, but his skin was not as tough as that. As long as he could avoid the bones, he would be able to inflict a fatal injury on Ling Han. Ling Han merely humped. If the divine physique that had been cultivated through the indestructible heaven scroll could be dealt with like that, what right would it have to be ranked above celestial king tier techniques? Wanting to damage his internal organs? Easier said than done. However, his blood and flesh were too heavily damaged, which would also cause a very serious injury to him, and he could not truly ignore it. Ling Han, I am already tired of this, Zhao Qingfeng declared loudly. His bronze-like body exuded a dazzling brilliance, and his fighting spirit and vitality were burning to the pinnacle. This state could not be maintained for long. He needed to immediately kill Ling Han, and then gain his breakthrough amidst the slaughter. Heavens will guillotine, he exclaimed lowly. Boom, his whole person had vanished, and what replaced him was actually a gigantic bronze guillotine. The blade of the guillotine was shockingly his neck connected to his head. Wang, an indescribable aura rolled out. Ling Han felt as if his whole body had been set rigidly in place, and an indescribable reverence rose up from the depths of his heart. It was as if this guillotine was executing punishment on behalf of the heavens, and he could only accept the punishment without protest. The bronze guillotine flew over whilst Zhao Qingfeng proudly proclaimed, I am heaven's will itself. This was his strongest secret technique, the strongest attack that drew on the divine fetus. No matter how much of a prodigy you were, you ultimately would not be able to escape being sentenced by heaven's will. Your only fate would be death. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared, and instantly swept away all the negative feelings in his heart. However, the might of this guillotine was indeed frightening. It was really possible that it had approached the level of Yang Soul Tier. But so what? The guillotine opened, and harshly chopped out at Ling Han. Wang, the regulations of the great Tao rippled out, celestial light streaking through. Not good. Lu Xianming immediately stood up. Just now, even if there were defensive formations in place, his spirit had still been influenced by the heavens will guillotine. He actually hadn't reacted at the first instant, and only when the guillotine blade chopped down did he finally come back to his senses. Oh no, Ling Han was dead. His expression was full of bafflement. Someone being capable of fighting a close battle with Zhao Qingfeng, how hard would it be to find this kind of martial arts prodigy? But now, he had actually been eliminated by Zhao Qingfeng. Sighing, he slowly sat back down. Since he had already died, it was only a waste of emotion to think further of him. Meanwhile, Sun Dong yelled out in excitement. He had finally been killed. Now, his *S could finally be comforted. Cheng Fengyun was also incredibly elated. After commenting for so many days, his judgment had finally come true for once, which made him practically weep in joy. Bewitching Maiden Ru and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, meanwhile, were despondent. Though cheers rang out like thunder from all around them, they couldn't hear the slightest bit of it. In the end, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was not as confident in Ling Han as the Empress. Otherwise, the Empress would not possibly be worried in the slightest. As the celestial light dispersed, that guillotine blade was still placed at Ling Han's neck, but the strike could not go through at all. They could all see Zhao Qingfeng's face was filled with shock. This had surpassed his imagination. He had drawn on the strongest attack of his divine fetus. It contained a sliver of celestial king tier regulations, and actually still did not manage to sever Ling Han's neck and behead him. This was extremely inconceivable. The cheers in the arena came to an abrupt halt. What was going on here? He didn't die even with that. Not only did he not die, he actually did not spill even the slightest drop of blood. Sun Dong was astounded. Cheng Fengyun was shocked, and a feeling of having fallen into a trap rose up in him. Ling Han showed a smile, and said, "So this is your strongest move." Nothing impressive. He actively channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. To say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng, even if Yang Xianlu himself was here, even if he was a fifth severance, he could not possibly kill Ling Han. The defense of the present Ling Han was at least at Yin Soul level. "You should take a strike from me too," Ling Han stated calmly. The power of the fire divine fetus was unleashed, and boom, boundless flames surged out. It was as if a massive explosion had taken place in the whole arena, making everyone widen their eyes as if they were blind. They could not see anything clearly at all. When the light of the flames washed away, another figure had appeared in the arena. That was an elder that had a tall build, and like an eagle picking up a chicken, he had picked up a person in his hand, and that was Zhao Qingfeng. His limbs were drooping weakly, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Chapter 1875, Breaking Through. Chapter 1875, Breaking Through. However, Ling Han sighed. Zhao Qingfeng was not dead. He had indeed sustained severe injuries, but at the last crucial moment, a powerful figure had interfered and saved him. The elder with a tall build turned to Ling Han, and said, "Brat, don't be disappointed. I am saving you here. If you had killed a member of the Eternal Prosperity sect, there would have been no place for you to hide in this whole wide world. You are an elite, so whatever you say." Ling Han bowed slightly, and said, "My lord speaks true." In any case, he did not cultivate the regulation of slaughter. He had accumulated boundless appreciation through this battle, and once he had completely digested this, he would have a chance of advancing into the fourth severance. As for Zhao Qingfeng, when he left the city, he would find a chance to kill him. "In this battle, Ling Han is victorious," this tall, broad elder announced. This process of turning the tide had happened too quickly, and everyone had a slight difficulty in accepting this turn of events. Wasn't it Zhao Qingfeng who still had the absolute upper hand? Why had he lost all of a sudden? However, since this was personally announced by this powerful figure, who would dare express disagreement? Those who had placed bets all sighed. All of them had placed their bets on Zhao Qingfeng's victory, and the only difference was how many moves it would take, but now the result was so beyond expectations. One could only say that the gamble house had turned over a great profit. Everyone left gradually, and those like Sun Dong and Cheng Fengyun were at a loss. Even now, they had not come back to their senses. Why was it Ling Han that had won? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden finally released the breath that she was holding. She could feel that her whole body was covered with sweat, her face astonishingly pale. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ru humphed. This damn man was clearly very strong, yet caused her to worry so long for nothing. He really was despicable. Ling Han left, yet he had just barely walked out when he was met with a familiar face. "Brother Ling, I never thought I would actually see you here." Lu Xianming laughed loudly. Sun Dong, who was following behind him, shivered in fear. Only now did he realize what a big mistake he had previously made. As it turned out, Lu Xianming and Ling Han knew each other. No wonder Lu Xianming would be displeased about him, and the crux of the matter lay here. His heart clenched, and he instantly thought of a measure to make up for it. He hurriedly shot out quickly, bowed deeply towards Ling Han, and said, "Brother Ling, I have previously offended you greatly. That was out of my own foolishness, and I hope Brother Ling would forgive me." A sliver of a smile flashed across Lu Xianming's face. This subordinate was not too bad. He had taken the initiative to admit his error, and had given Ling Han enough face. Lu Xianming was sure that Ling Han would be very pleased. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not think too much of it. Sun Dong had come to provoke him, and he had punished the former for it too, so he had long since forgotten about it unless Sun Dong did something again. Ling Han thus waved a hand dismissively, and said, "I have already forgotten." Forgotten? Forgotten naturally meant that it was all water under the bridge. Only now did Sun Dong sigh in relief. He stole a glance at Lu Xianming, and seeing a smile appear on the latter's face, he knew that he had done the right thing. "Brother Lu." Ling Han also raised his clasped hands in greeting towards Lu Xianming. "Come, let's continue the conversation after we return," Lu Xianming said smilingly. "There's no rush. I still have a companion," Ling Han replied with a smile. "Yo, just one? Then what about me?" Bewitching Maiden Ru walked over with swaying hips, and even if Lu Xianming had strong self-control against feminine charms, he couldn't help but look stunned. Even less needed to be said about Sun Dong. He had a fondness for women, so how could he possibly resist Bewitching Maiden Ru's charms? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stood beside Bewitching Maiden Ru, and immediately paled in comparison. As far as Ling Han knew, there were only two others that could emerge superior over Bewitching Maiden Rao the Empress and Hu Niu. Ling Han sighed. "What are you playing at, you witch? Are you really planning to deliver the 9 revolutions charm physique for my cultivation? Heh, since you are Brother Ling's friends, then let's go together," Lu Xianming said with a smile, though light flickered in the gaze he directed at Bewitching Maiden Ru. He had the confidence to capture this seductive witch for himself. Who was he? A young master of Alchemy City, and very soon he would advance, and would become the future master of Alchemy City. And that was still not enough to make this delicate woman throw herself into his arms. Ling Han? Ling Han was indeed very strong, but this was Alchemy City. No matter how strong you were, you would only be a hired thug. Moreover, just how far was the severing mundane tier from ascending origin tier? At least in the future billions and billions of years, Ling Han only had potential. Hearing Lu Xianming say thus, Ling Han could not refuse, either. He only beckoned Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden over, and wrapped an arm around her slender waist, which calmed Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's heart greatly. There were thousands of years of affection between herself and Ling Han. Lu Xianming saw this, and naturally was even more certain in his heart. Though he did not know why Ling Han was not interested in Bewitching Maiden Ru, what did that have to do with him? The group arrived at Lu Xianming's courtyard, and arrangements for the accommodations of Ling Han and his group were made first. Then, everyone sat in the center of a garden, with fine wine served to them. Sipping wine, they conversed idly. Lu Xianming's main focus was naturally recruiting Ling Han, but he did not have any position to do so at present. You see, he had first wanted to save Ling Han, yet had missed the chance, leading to the situation now in which he still owed Ling Han his life. How could he bring himself to speak of recruitment? Then they'd just start from being friends. He was the holy son of Alchemy City, and with his invitation, Lu Xianming naturally did not need to be concerned about the rules of the 4th level. Ling Han could stay however many days he wanted as long as Lu Xianming did not throw him out. On the 2nd day, the Tao regulating pill was delivered. Ling Han did not consume it, but rather handed it over to the Empress. There were really too many treasures he had. Even the majority of celestial kings would be bloodshot with envy about the 9 heavens flame and Xianyin source water. In comparison, the Empress's foundations were much weaker. And they had also been gained with the support of Small Tower. By now, only precious treasures like the heavenly Tao jade could be of any help to Ling Han. The Tao regulating pill was really not enough. In the case of the heavenly Tao jade, he could only refine it after he had reached about the 4th severance peak stage. Otherwise, it would only make up for the shortcomings in his previous path of cultivation, but could not help one to attempt the 5th severance. The Empress naturally would not be reserved with Ling Han. Initially, she still needed some time to break through to the 4th severance, but with the Tao regulating pill, she would definitely be able to break through in a shorter period of time. Ling Han was the same. He had really gained much from his battle with Zhao Qingfeng, and he himself had reached the 3rd severance peak stage. After this battle, he had reached a state of perfection, and immediately entered into seclusion to begin his breakthrough to the 4th severance. This disappointed Lu Xianming slightly. He was still hoping to form amicable relations with Ling Han. In his eyes, attempting the 4th severance was definitely something that would take a long time, and without over 10,000 years, one shouldn't even think of succeeding. Never mind. Their lifespan was unlimited now, so if he had to wait 10,000 years, then so be it. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han sat down cross-legged underneath the reincarnation tree. The 4th severance was already within sight, and he only had to complete the final dash. The battle with Zhao Qingfeng continuously flashed through his mind, and Ling Han picked out the shortcomings that he had observed. All these needed to be improved on, and the experience that came from battle caused him to rise to a higher level. Underneath the reincarnation tree, one day was equivalent to 100 years. Even if Ling Han had already seen hope, he had still stayed in the Black Tower for a whole 2 months, and only then did he finally sense the turning point for his breakthrough. When he stood up, the Empress, too, opened her eyes. Her breakthrough was similarly in sight. The two of them exited the Black Tower, their figures stepping on air, and arriving at a desolate mountain. Then, they released their auras. Suddenly, tribulation clouds rolled out, enshrouding the air above them respectively, which was incredibly frightening. Fuck, is there something wrong with you people? At this moment, a naked Mad suddenly popped out of the wilderness. As he stopped in fury, he rapidly threw on some clothing, and there were actually 2 other women beside him. They similarly were quickly putting on their clothes. They just happened to be having a romp in the wild. Chapter 1876, Pill Concoction Again. Chapter 1876, Pill Concoction Again. Shimon Da felt very depressed. By nature, he was wanton and unrestrained, and today, on a whim, he had brought 2 of his paramours to this wild mountainous area. With the skies as their blanket and the earth as their bed, he planned to have a completely unreserved party of 3. In the end, they had yet to begin when tribulation clouds had come all of a sudden. Someone was enduring a heavenly tribulation. Ordinarily speaking, the heavens had good eyes, and as long as you did not actively interfere, the divine lightning would not strike you even if you were close at hand. But after the divine lightning descended, what would happen to the shock waves that were created in the process was not within the heavens' range of consideration. Thus, when someone was experiencing the heavenly tribulation, it was still best to avoid them as much as possible. Unless it was a severing mundane tear enduring the heavenly tribulation, and you yourself were a dividing soul tear, then you couldn't just boldly stand within the scope of the heavenly tribulation. The aftermath that was generated could not possibly cause much damage to you only then. The problem here was that both Ling Han and the Empress were existences that were close to the monarch tier, and they were experiencing the heavenly tribulation for fourth severance, which was astonishingly terrifying. Shimon Da naturally could only hurriedly pull his two female companions along and flee in a panic. "Fuck, are you people doing it on purpose?" When he had reached a safe area, Shimon Da couldn't help but point at the skies and curse. "Wasn't I just indulging myself in a bout of public s***? Do you guys have to cause trouble to me like this?" However, when his eyes glimpsed the Empress, a stunned expression instantly appeared on his face. "Fuck, how could there be such a beautiful woman, young master?" The two beautiful women both played coy, patting their bountiful breasts, and looking as if they had not regained their wits from the terrible scare, and needed him to soothe their fears. If this had been any other time, Shimon Da would definitely have gone nearer with a perverted expression, but at present, he did not have the slightest bit of interest. He carelessly pushed the two women to one side, his eyes fixed on the Empress while shining with a light that made him look like a hungry wolf. "Yee, this guy." Finally, he had spotted Ling Han, and couldn't help but experience a shock. "It's the guy that defeated Zhao Qingfeng." Immediately, he felt a cold chill rise up from the soles of his feet, and in an instant, all his lecherous intent was erased without a trace. The Shimon clan was very strong, and had an immortal palace-tier ancestor keeping watch. In alchemy, they could also be considered a respected clan, but it was only that. They had not reached the extent of having a critical role. However, it was rumored that a considerable number of powerful figures had already expressed interest in Ling Han, wanting to take him as disciple, son-in-law, or something of the like. In short, Ling Han was very popular now, overwhelmingly and outrageously popular. To offend Ling Han at this point in time was really a very unwise action. Shimon Da might be a pervert, but he was no idiot. Our Shimon clan, too, wants to recruit this man, but has completely no way to contest with those mighty figures, Shimon Da thought. However, he could be considered as having incurred a debt to me with this, so I could use this opportunity to befriend him. You should not covet the wives of your friends. Shimon Da was well aware of this principle. Though he was lecherous, even robbers had their principles. He was definitely not going to steal his friend's wife, and all his friends were well aware of that. He would just sit by and watch as Ling Han and the Empress endured the heavenly tribulation, and when they were done, he would immediately approach and worm his way into befriending them. But as he watched, his expression slowly changed. This was the fuck heavenly tribulation for fourth severance. Did they think he had never endured the fourth severance? When he endured the heavenly tribulation for the fourth severance, it did not even have a 100th of the power behind this. No, no, no. It was not only a 100th, it did not even have a 10,000th of the might of this heavenly tribulation. As expected of the man that had defeated Zhao Qingfeng. Hold on, Ling Han being so strong was one thing, but why was the heavenly tribulation for this beauty also so terrifying? Realization suddenly dawned on him. The heavenly tribulation was actually the best reflection of one's strength. The stronger the heavenly tribulation, the higher one's strength was. That was why the heavens would increase the might of the heavenly tribulation to temper them as appropriate. Monsters, two monsters. This kind of woman was absolutely no one that he could covet. Shimon Da immediately made up his mind, and did not dare to have any further ideas about the Empress. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation had passed, the tribulation clouds dispersed, and both Ling Han and the Empress descended onto the ground, exchanging a smile with each other. Ling Han had greater gains. He had tempered his physique again, and truly reached the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. By now, while his battle prowess had still not reached the level of young soul tier, it was already very, very difficult for young soul tiers to kill him. Even if they were to refine him through regulations, that would need years to accomplish. If he faced Zhao Qingfeng now, a confident smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Within 100 moves, he would definitely be able to kill him, not defeat, but rather kill. Ling Han looked towards Shimon Da, smiled, and said, "Friend, apologies. I thought there was no one here." It's fine, it's fine. In any case, I was not injured, either. Shimon Da grinned brightly. I've yet to congratulate young Master Ling for advancing to the 4th severance. Becoming a dividing soul tier will be just around the corner. Ling Han was slightly surprised, and asked, You know me? By now, who would not know of young Master Ling in Alchemy City? Shimon Da asked. This naturally was an exaggeration, but flattery was always pleasant, so these words of flattery still made Ling Han considerably pleased. At least, the Empress was very pleased. No matter how others flattered her, respected her, or feared her, she would take it all as a matter of course, but if it was flattering Ling Han, she would be elated. Ling Han chuckled. He naturally would not become smug and conceited, and treat this person as a close friend just because of a few flattering words. Young Master Ling, why don't you come and visit my humble abode so I could host a celebratory feast in your honor? Shimon Da took the chance to offer an invitation. Ling Han shook his head, and replied, No need. I have other business. He paused, and thinking that he had indeed almost caused the heavenly tribulation to implicate these 3 people, he said, I am presently staying at Lu Xianming's place. If you are free, you can come and pay a visit. Good. 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 Shimon Da was just feeling a little disappointed, but when he heard the last few words, he was naturally overjoyed, and nodded hurriedly. Ling Han directed a smile at the other, and holding the Empress's slender hand, he returned to Lu Xianming's place. When Lu Xianming knew that Ling Han had come out of seclusion, he couldn't help but feel pleasantly surprised. He had thought he would have to wait over 10,000 years at first, and when he discovered that Ling Han had actually successfully broken through to the 4th severance, he was incredibly astounded. It had just been 2 months, and Ling Han had actually broken through. He really was a freak. Lu Xianming could not help but feel impressed. It was no wonder that Ling Han could defeat Zhao Qingfeng. His talent in martial arts was really awesome to the extreme. Thankfully, he himself was an alchemist, and no matter how outstanding Ling Han was, he could not possibly threaten his position. Lu Xianming wanted to celebrate Ling Han's feat, but was met with Ling Han's tactful refusal. The latter went out to look for a time cultivation chamber. He wanted to become a celestial-level alchemist in the shortest period of time possible. Initially, there were a great many higher-ups that wanted to recruit him, but he had just come out of seclusion, and then entered into seclusion again. It could not be helped. These people could only wait, which also caused some powerful figures to become angered. You are but a mere severing mundane tier, so don't you think you are being too arrogant? But when they found out that Ling Han had broken through to the 4th severance, the anger of these mighty figures all disappeared without a trace. Prodigy. He was really too genius. Immediately, they made adjustments to their previous plans, and brought out more sincere conditions to recruit Ling Han. For the moment, Ling Han did not know of these matters. He was inside the time cultivation chamber, tirelessly working on pill concoction. On the 4th level, the acceleration effects had improved from 20 times to 30 times, but the price was also enough to strike one dumbfounded. The acceleration of 30 times shockingly needed 30,000 starstones for a single day, and this was also why people from the 1st level could come here, but there would not be many at all who could take out enough starstones to stay here for a day. Ling Han swept an eye over the Black Tower, and paid for 10 days. 10 days, after acceleration, would mean 300 days, which was enough for him to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills. He began to concoct pills, and failed a few times consecutively. When it had reached the 5th day in the outside world, which was also over 150 days later in the cultivation chamber, he finally entered into a prime condition. The success of his first cauldron of celestial pills was close at hand. Ah! He suddenly humphed lowly, a strong shiver overcoming his whole body. All of a sudden, he collapsed onto the ground. Peng! The cauldron went out of control, and exploded immediately. Chapter 1877, The Curse Activates. Chapter 1877, The Curse Activates. Multiple veins popped out on Ling Han's forehead. He felt incredible agony take over his whole body. The black murderous curse had activated. It would activate once a year. Though the normal time had not passed, Linghan had spent a considerable amount of time inside the time cultivation chamber, and added with that time, the time limit of a year was already reached. Because he himself had not expected it, either, he was caught completely off guard. Linghan directly lost all control, leading to the explosion of the cauldron. Now, he was not in the mood to bother about that. He could only curl up on the ground, resisting that indescribable agony. Old Demon Bloodshadow was so sure that Linghan would obediently work for him, and naturally there was a reason for it. That was because this pain was really incredibly piercingly agonizing, surpassing everything Linghan had experienced before. Linghan gritted his teeth, and worked hard on resisting it. He had powerful determination, and did not submit under this kind of agonizing pain. Instead, he sat up in a cross-legged position, resisting the black murderous curse head-on. Not only was he going to become a monarch tier, he was also going to be an invincible overlord of all monarch tiers. Thus, he had to reach absolute perfection in every single aspect. Natural talent, determination, and effort, not a single one was dispensable. Multiple black-veined patterns appeared on his body. That was the black murderous curse activating, and wreaking havoc in Linghan's body. There was one thing that the old demon Bloodshadow had lied to Linghan about. When the black murderous curse activated completely, the pain that Linghan endured would only reach this extent. However, the moment it activated, it would not stop, but would rather torment Linghan for as long as 10,000 years, and only then would it end his life. He said that when it truly activated, it would be 10,000 times worse, but that was only a mere threat for Linghan so that he would do the job as best as he could. Droplets of cold sweat poured down Linghan's forehead, but aside from the beginning when he was completely unprepared, and released a yell of pain, he did not let out a single sound further. He gritted his teeth tightly, and observed the channeling of the black murderous curse. It should be known that this was something planted by an ascending origin tier elite, and it was unavoidable that it contained his Tao. However, one could not possibly observe it usually. He would have long since been driven to screaming out in pain under the agonizing torment. How could he possibly bother to take notice of this? Linghan had strong determination. He was observing the channeling of the black murderous curse. Then, as long as his strength had reached a certain extent, he would be able to dispel this black murderous curse by himself. If he could avoid dying once, he naturally did not wish to die. This kind of torment lasted for a total of a whole day and night. Linghan wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead, and felt that all his clothes had been dampened with sweat. His spirit was very worn out, but the toughness of his spirit had strengthened slightly. A sliver of a smile appeared on his face. The old demon Bloodshadow would never have imagined that not only would this black murderous curse not become a seal that pushed him to death, it would instead have the effect of tempering his spirit. However, Linghan did not have the slightest intention of thanking this old bastard. Once he had enough strength, he would definitely take off this old bastard's head. He rested for a dozen over days, and only then did he dust himself off, and continued pill concoction. With the acceleration of time, 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Linghan's expression was slightly excited, and with a sudden shout, "Pa, pa, pa," he delivered 3 consecutive palm strikes on the alchemy cauldron. The cauldron instantly shattered, but it was not an explosion due to failure. This tomate had truly been destroyed by Linghan's assault. 3 alchemical pills floated in the air. It was as if they had sprouted wings as they flew around in the air, but because this was a closed-off space, they could not possibly escape no matter what. Linghan laughed, and stretching a hand to grab at the empty air, he made the 3 pills fall into the palm of his hand. Pills completed. They were purple moon spirit suppression pills, a type of 1-star celestial pill. It was used by severing mundane tiers, having the effect of suppressing one's spirit. During cultivation, cultivators would be comprehending Great Tao, but Great Tao was boundless, so how could it be so easily analyzed? It was very possible that the tables would be turned, causing the cultivator to lose himself within Great Tao. This purple moon spirit suppression pill would then be able to suppress one's spirit so he would not lose himself. The ratio of celestial medicines used was different, and the purple moon spirit suppression pill also had different grades due to the difference in skill of the alchemist, which were low grade, medium grade, high grade, and peak grade, respectively. These 3 purple moon spirit suppression pills of mine should be capable of belonging to the medium grade, Ling Han assessed. This was not being modest or boastful, as that was indeed the case. Being able to reach the medium grade with my first successful concoction, I am indeed awesome. This time, he was slightly proud of himself. However, this was actually Ling Han's second successful concoction. The first time he had been about to succeed, he had experienced the sudden assault from the black murderous curse, but the experience he should have accumulated he had still accumulated. Furthermore, his spirit had also become stronger this time round. Thus, the moment he succeeded in his concoction, it was medium grade. There was a reason for it. Ling Han used his divine sense like a blade, and emblazoned Han on the alchemical pills. Every alchemist would inscribe a unique seal on creations they were proud of. Though this could not be considered a creation that Ling Han was proud of, it was still the first cauldron of celestial pills he had concocted, and he really had spent a very, very long time on it. This was worth remembering. Because he had not reached the time of 10 days, Ling Han simply chose to concoct another cauldron of purple moon spirit suppression pills. However, the grade did not increase and reach high grade this time. It was still medium grade. Even if he was the alchemy emperor, he could not ascend the heavens with a single step. He exited the cultivation chamber, and returned to Lu Xianming's place. At this time, at least over a dozen forces sent representatives, and they were waiting for him. Some wanted to take him as a disciple, while some wanted to take him as a son-in-law. In short, they had all shown their greatest sincerity to make him one of their own. As usual, Ling Han refused them all. What a joke, wasn't this looking down on him? His target was becoming the future master of this alchemy city. Seeing Ling Han refuse the others one after another, Lu Xianming thought that Ling Han had done so for his sake, so he was naturally extremely pleased. Ling Han made his queries. To become an alchemist of Alchemy City, he had to undergo a test at the Alchemist Pavilion. The first step was becoming a junior apprentice, and then a middle-level apprentice, and then a high-level apprentice, and then only would he be qualified to be tested as an alchemist. The requirement for a high-level apprentice was being able to concoct level 20 divine pills, and above that was a 1-star alchemist, which was reasonable. Ling Han gave an O. Actually, he was able to become a high-level apprentice right from the very beginning, but only thought that he would be able to open the great doors of Alchemy City by becoming a 1-star alchemist. He had really thought too much. But that was fine. By now, he could directly emerge as a 1-star alchemist, which was even more awesome. He went off to the Alchemist Pavilion to undergo the test. This time, he had really kept a low profile, focusing completely on gaining the status of an alchemist. Thus, he did not even ask the Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to accompany him. You see, if he would still attract trouble like that, then it really was not his fault. He did not delay the slightest on his journey. Ling Han soon arrived at the Alchemist Pavilion. It was an incredibly majestic and austere pavilion, occupying as many as 10,000 fields, and was indescribably tall and towering. This was the landmark of Alchemy City, at least one of them. The truly majestic Alchemist Pavilion was at the 5th level, which was 100 times grander than the 4th level. Ling Han stood, raising his head to study it. As he ascended, there were as many as 300 meters of steps alone, and they were all paved with high-grade jade, exuding a faint luster. Ling Han! A voice rang out, and there was a young man standing on the steps. He was looking down on Ling Han loftily, and when he saw that Ling Han had glimpsed him, he descended the steps. I am Oyu Khan. Oyu Khan, one of the holy sons of Alchemy City. Clearly, he was deliberately waiting for Ling Han here, but why? Chapter 1878, Holy Son Oyu Khan. Chapter 1878, Holy Son Oyu Khan. Ling Han smiled faintly, and asked, How can I help you, Holy Son Oyu? Oyu Khan had already descended the stairs with a few steps, and walked to Ling Han's side. He bared his mouth in a grin, 2 rows of teeth white and neat, as he said, You are truly a busy person. It really is difficult to even meet you. Ling Han only chuckled in response. This Oyu Khan put on a pretense as if they were old friends, but he was not even familiar with him. To say nothing of being familiar with him, He was not familiar with Lu Xianming, even. It was just that the latter was very cordial, and added with the fact that Ling Han had also saved him before, he had thus accepted his invitation. His divine sense was sensitive, and discovered that there were at least 4 individual divine senses locked on him. But they were only at the severing mundane tiers level, so he naturally was completely fearless. They should belong to Oyu Khan's guards. He himself was only in the severing mundane tier. An alchemist did not need to have a high cultivation level, because the requirement for concocting celestial pills was only the severing mundane tier. If they could advance into this level, then they would be able to concoct even celestial pills. But in truth, because their divine sense was not strong enough, it was practically an impossible feat for a severing mundane tier to concoct a * celestial pill. At least, a miracle like that had yet to happen. Ordinarily, a severing mundane tier could concoct 2-star celestial pills at most, while dividing soul tier could concoct 3-star pills, only a level higher than themselves. And also because of that, when Alchemy City chose its heirs, there was no need for cultivation level to become the largest factor of consideration. It was fine as long as they could advance into the severing mundane tier. With oceans of alchemical pills bombarding them without any care for the expense, advancing to the ascending origin tier was no mere dream. Of course, being capable of becoming high-grade alchemists, how could they themselves possibly be any idiots? Thus, the chairperson of Alchemy City ordinarily would possess the cultivation level of the ascending origin tier, but this battle prowess was possibly the weakest in the ascending origin tier. Even if they reached consummate level, they would only possess the standard of great accomplishment. Whatever the case, because Oyu Khan's cultivation level was not high, and furthermore, they were in Alchemy City, the only people he could mobilize would only be at the severing mundane tier. Ling Han, are you interested in working for me? Oyu Khan saw Ling Han was expressionless, and did not beat around the bush, getting straight to the point. Ling Han shook his head, and very crisply answered, no. Oyu Khan's expression looked a little ugly after having been rebuffed like this. For a holy son like himself, whose status was noble, it was really very difficult to hear others say no to him. Thankfully, his composure control was not too bad, and he immediately suppressed this kind of displeasure. Aren't you going to hear the conditions I offer? He forced out a sliver of a smile. No need. Ling Han shook his head. The other party had probably misunderstood. Ling Han had no intention of working for Lu Xianming at all, and now he was only a guest at the Lu clan. But true, this was Alchemy City where alchemists were revered and respected. Cultivators had their martial arts, and weren't they all wanting to sell themselves to high-grade alchemists, and would thus have no worries of getting a few alchemical pills for their efforts. After advancing to the severing mundane tier, the rate of cultivation would slow down to a snail's pace if a cultivator could not be supported with celestial medicines. They could only advance further by depending on celestial medicines. After advancing into the severing mundane tier, cultivation was actually a contest with time. Otherwise, a few more immortals' tribulations, and they really would be killed if their own strength had not increased. Hence why alchemists had such outstanding status. From a certain aspect, they had grasp over the life of a cultivator. Oyu Khan had been rebuffed twice in a row, and his displeasure finally seeped into his expression, and he said, Ling Han, don't forget yourself. No matter how much of a prodigy you are merely a severing mundane tier, and are not yet qualified to ask for sky-high prices. Ling Han sighed. Why had he encountered yet another idiot? What did he do? Refusing your offer of recruitment means that I am looking down on you, and have forgotten myself in my conceit. Fuck, has he proposed a price? Asking for sky-high prices, your sister. How could there be such a person who went off talking on his own? Ling Han's expression also turned cold, and he said, step aside, and don't waste my time. Ling Han. Oyu Khan's voice rose a few pitches higher. I know, you are merely waiting for a good offer. I might as well tell you, though Lu Xianming's present situation is indeed superior, us other holy sons and holy daughters are not people to be trifled with, either. There are 9 holy sons and holy daughters of Alchemy City, and aside from a few useless pieces of trash, Iou Khan Jiaobang and Qin Guyu are all qualified to contest with Lu Xianming. Furthermore, We have already decided to join forces and kick him out of the contest first. You are clinging to a tree that is destined to wilt, isn't that too stupid? This was an idiot. Which ear have you heard with, and which eye have you seen with that I am going to mix around with Lu Xianming? You can't be that self-opinionated. Ling Han shook his head. He was really worried about the IQ of this person. And he wanted to contest for the position of chairperson like this. Oh, right. Ling Han's own aim was also to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, or at least an heir. Firstly, he could make his name known so he could reach Commander Guan, and secondly, he was fond of alchemy in the first place, and was of a mind to develop himself here. Going by that logic, whether it was this Ou Khan or Lu Xianming, they were actually all his competitors. Ling Han scratched his head. Previously, he had not taken this problem into consideration. As the alchemy emperor, he was too confident in himself in the area of alchemy. With all others being mediocre, there really were none that he took seriously. Thus, he had never taken Lu Xianming and the other 9 holy sons and holy daughters to heart and considered them his rivals. It was just like when the Lion King ascended the throne. Would he have to be concerned about a few lambs that he had passed on his way? Ling Han broke into a grin. Since Ou Khan was also a competitor, then there was no harm in playing around with him and striking a blow to his pride. Then what do you suggest? He asked. Ou Khan instantly bore an expression of pride. See, he only had to reveal his trump card slightly, and this brat had cowered as expected. Just playing up to those in power. This was also his twisted logic. If you did not listen to me, then you had forgotten yourself in your conceit. If you listened, you were merely playing up to those in power. In any case, it was still he who was in a lofty position, and everything was up to him to decide. I will give you 2 choices. The first is an inferior plan, and that is to leave Lu Xianming and get out of Alchemy City. The second is a superior option, and that is to come under my banner, and I will take you to the pinnacle of your life. Ling Han almost spluttered in laughter. Why don't you just go ahead and say that you will allow me to show off and fly? He shook his head and said, I choose the third option. What third option? There was no third option. Ou Khan's expression cooled, and he said, Oh, you want to add on a condition? Fine then, go ahead and say it. Ling Han smiled and said, I'll be the boss, and you holy sons and holy daughters should all come and bow down to me. By the look of things now, this was a joke, but only Ling Han was filled with confidence. In future, he was to become the king of Alchemy City. Then, whether it was Ou Khan, Lu Xianming, or the other holy sons and holy daughters, they would all have to bow down to him as their master. Ha 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 ha. Ou Khan laughed quickly in derision. This time, he had really been angered. A mere severing mundane tear. So what if you were even more of a prodigy? This was Alchemy City. Ling Han ascended the steps, and said, Step aside. At first, Ou Khan wanted to make a move, but thinking of Ling Han's terrifying strength, the hand that he had raised slightly immediately lowered. If he did make a move, he would only be asking for his own humiliation. Furthermore, he would be shamed if he, a noble holy son, was to be beaten. He humphed, and followed Ling Han with a wave of his sleeve. Ling Han, then I'll just let you see what kind of power the holy son of Alchemy City has. You want to buy alchemical pills? Hehe, without my agreement, just see who would dare sell anything to you. He deserved to be a holy son even with such narrow-mindedness. Ling Han shook his head internally. In comparison, Lu Xianming was indeed considerably stronger. It was no wonder he was the most popular. However, his intention was not to buy alchemical pills in the first place. If you continue to think so highly of yourself, aren't you afraid that you would fly into rage out of humiliation later? Speaking of rage out of humiliation, Ling Han involuntarily smiled. Then, he'd just play around with this guy. Chapter 1879, Causing Trouble. Chapter 1879, Causing Trouble. Not only was the Alchemist Pavilion the place to authenticate alchemists and alchemist trainees, it was also the largest pharmacy of every level that sold alchemical pills. How could Ou Khan possibly think that Ling Han was here to take the test for alchemists? In his eyes, he had to have come to buy celestial pills. As a holy son, Oyu Khan had special privileges. If he couldn't even decide who could buy the alchemical pills, this title would really be too useless. Ling Han ignored him, and continued on ahead, his speed very fast. Oyu Khan hurriedly set off in pursuit with large strides. As he saw it, Ling Han wanted to throw him off his tail, and then go to purchase alchemical pills. P2E, in his dreams. Behind him, 4 guards appeared and followed closely behind. The distance of a few hundred meters was nothing to a severing mundane tear. Though there were protective formations here, which largely restricted the speed of traveling, that was only a few breaths' time. Ling Han thus entered into the great pavilion. The first floor of this great pavilion sold alchemical pills. Multiple pill drawers were lined up, and there was no end in sight. Furthermore, they were rows upon rows, and their exact number was unknown. Even in a celestial king tier level force, it was still mortals below severing mundane tier that were the majority, and Alchemy City was naturally no exception, either. Thus, the majority of alchemical pills here were sold to mortals, and the largest number was targeted at immortal level. There were also very few that were meant for the shattering void tier and below. That was because citizens of the celestial realm were born powerful. The majority was already in the shattering void tier by birth, so would there still be any need for alchemical pills for spiritual ocean tier or heaven tier? Ling Han began to walk around. A celestial had a limitless lifespan, at least it was fine to waste 1 or 2 days' time. Oyu Khan followed him all the way, and wherever they went, the attendants behind the pill cabinets would pay their respects to him. A holy son was high and noble. A hint of pride appeared on Oyu Khan's face. The previous blow that had wounded his confidence was currently recovering. See, that is how awesome and amazing I am. Ling Han deliberately stopped, and asked for the pricing of the alchemical pills. Oyu Khan stood behind him, and directly said, "No sale." The attendant showed a troubled expression. What logic was there to pushing customers out the door in a business? But this holy son had already spoken, and no matter how brave he was, he did not dare go against his will. "Customer, many apologies. This pill is not for sale," he said with slight anxiety, fearing that he would lose his job, but what he feared more was that Ling Han would hold a grudge against him. After all, he was only in the heavenly body tier. Ling Han chucked, and continued on walking ahead. Whatever pill that he stopped to ask about the price of, the vendors all directly told him it was not for sale under Oyu Khan's overbearing pressure. After walking around for a good while, Ling Han indeed could not possibly purchase a single alchemical pill. "How about it? Do you now know the consequences of going against my will?" Oyu Khan asked proudly, and then his tone turned cold. "Furthermore, though Alchemy City forbids murder, do you know that some people could possibly disappear inexplicably? I heard you have 2 beautiful wives too. TSK, TSK. You can't be hoping to make them into widows, right? Women are really too unreliable. Possibly not even grass has sprouted on your grave, and they are already playing coy in the arms of another man." These words were very malicious and filled with threat. Instantly, Ling Han's expression darkened. "If you want to play around, I'll play with you, but you actually direct the spearhead at my wives." Ling Han could not tolerate that. "Who do you fuck think you are?" Ling Han turned around abruptly. "Pa," he grabbed Oyu Khan's collar and picked him up. Though the latter was a peak stage 4th Severance King tier, in front of Ling Han, he couldn't even fight back in the slightest. This was completely one-sided suppression. "If you are so determined to seek death, fine, I'll oblige you." Ling Han patted Oyu Khan's face with his palm. "Just hold on. If I don't kill you, then my name isn't Ling Han." Very quickly, he released his hold. This was the alchemist pavilion, and if he made a move on an alchemist, especially one that was a holy son, that would be too unwise. Oyu Khan still shivered in fear. That previous look in Ling Han's eyes possessed a very frightening aura, causing his heart to feel lingering fear. Even now, he had not regained his composure, but he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. In Alchemy City, in the alchemist pavilion, Ling Han actually dared to threaten him. This was his territory. "How dare you? He was so furious it felt like his chest was close to bursting. However, while Linghan had indeed picked him up just now, he did not make any further more, so he could not flare up. Firstly, it would make him seem too narrow-minded, and secondly, Linghan's reputation was not weak at all in recent times. If he could not take hold of Linghan's weakness and use it to compel him to join him, then he definitely would be targeted by Lu Xianming and pay an exorbitant price. His face was livid. "Do you really think that I can't do anything to you?" Oyu Khan quickly set off after him. He had already made up his mind. Today, he would not let Linghan buy a single alchemical pill, even if it was the very lowest grade of alchemical pill, and after today, he would send out assassins to get rid of Linghan. Just like he had said, in Alchemy City, some people could possibly disappear for no reason. As long as no bodies were discovered, who could say for sure that they had died? Linghan walked to the end of this great pavilion, and was immediately halted. "Visitors stop here. From the second floor onwards, it is not open to visitors." A guard immediately lowered the long spear in his hands, blocking Linghan's way forwards. Oyu Khan crossed his arms over his chest behind him, watching coldly. Linghan smiled faintly, and said, "I want to undergo the test for alchemists." Pu. Immediately, Oyu Khan spluttered, the expression on his face indescribably strange. "You want to take the test for alchemists? You have got to be joking, right? You are just a prodigy of martial arts. Could it be that you think that you are an all-round prodigy?" The guard faltered slightly. Going by the rules of Alchemist Pavilion, this was indeed allowed. He said, "Then, please wait. Allow me to make a report." He had a sound transmission stone, which could allow for instant communication across a short distance. Of course, this short distance was referring to the whole space of the fourth level of Alchemy City. After a while, a young man that looked like an alchemy apprentice walked out through the passage. When he saw Linghan, he calmly asked, "So you are the one that would like to be authenticated as an alchemist?" "That's right." Linghan nodded. Lord Holy Sun." This alchemy apprentice had just discovered Oyu Khan's presence, and quickly paid his respects. Oyu Khan waved him off dismissively, indicating that the other needed not have any reservations. This alchemy apprentice thought that Linghan was deliberately brought over by Oyu Khan, and the prideful expression on his face immediately disappeared. He cordially said to Linghan, "Are you already a high-grade trainee now?" "No." Linghan shook his head. "Then, a middle-grade trainee?" "No." "Beginner trainee?" "No." After asking for 3 times consecutively, and getting 3 negative answers in a row, the alchemy apprentice couldn't help but grit his teeth. "Then where did you get the pride to actually declare that you want to take the test for alchemists?" According to the rules, the test must begin from the lowest grade of trainee. Only high-grade trainees can test for the status of alchemist, this alchemy apprentice said carefully, fearing that he would anger Oyu Khan. "Fine." Linghan nodded. It was only a matter that would take more twists and turns simple enough. Oyu Khan merely smirked coldly by the side, but did not correct him. He wanted to have Linghan be praised here, praised so much to a lofty position, and then he would kick him off the pedestal with a single move so that he would be completely shamed. The alchemy apprentice led Linghan to the second floor, and then began the procedure for testing. Because the first step was only becoming a beginner trainee, there was only a middle-grade trainee as witness. "Greetings, Lord Holy Sun." That middle-grade trainee hurriedly paid his greetings when he saw Oyu Khan. He immediately understood. Linghan had to have a powerful background as he was qualified to have Oyu Khan accompany him. Even if he was as stupid as a pig, he would be lenient and allow him to pass. After all, it was only a beginner trainee. There would not be any investigations done. "Have him concoct the green rainbow pill," Oyu Khan suddenly spoke up. "Ah." That middle-grade trainee was instantly shocked. That was because the green rainbow pill was the hardest to concoct among beginner-grade alchemical pills. In fact, it could be compared to middle-grade alchemical pills. Chapter 1880 Alchemist Test. Chapter 1880 Alchemist Test. "Hadn't you come here to show support?" The middle-grade trainee couldn't understand. Why had he now come around to demand that Ling Han concoct the alchemical pill of the highest level of difficulty? But now that the Lord Holy Sun had spoken, did he dare raise any doubt? He did not even dare to ask the reason, and directly said to Ling Han, "Then you just concoct the green rainbow pill. Who knows, it may be that he is specialized in concocting this one." Ling Han nodded indifferently. They came to an alchemy chamber. Ling Han gave his name, and then entered, beginning his path of ascension in alchemy in the celestial realm. Oyu Khan sneered. He wanted to show Ling Han that with his help, it would not be any difficult matter for him to get the position of a low-grade alchemy trainee, or even the highest-grade alchemy trainee, but if he was angered. Humph. In the alchemy chamber, Ling Han had already begun. He started from separately picking out the medicinal ingredients, extracting essence, opening the cauldron, and starting the fire, all done smoothly. Amazing. The middle-grade trainee couldn't help but praise. One would know with just a comparison. He at least was inferior to Ling Han in these techniques. They were pleasing to see. This was practically a feast for the eyes. Oyu Khan was also shocked. As it turned out, Ling Han really knew how to concoct alchemical pills. At first, he had thought Ling Han had just been infuriated by his actions, and had thus blurted out he wanted to take the alchemist test, but it seemed like that was not the case. Hiss, could it be that he had not come to buy alchemical pills from the start? True, Lu Xianming should have a very high opinion of this guy. Then, no matter what alchemical pills Ling Han wanted, Lu Xianming would be able to provide them for him. What need was there for Ling Han to personally come to this place? But there was no perfect being in this world. Everyone had limited energy. Furthermore, Ling Han was far from reaching the pinnacle of cultivation, so how could he possibly have additional time to spend on alchemy? How had he gained all these abilities? An all-round prodigy? I don't believe it. However, whether Oyu Khan believed it or not, in any case, Ling Han had already entered into a brilliant state. Only after less than half a day, a cauldron of green rainbow pills was successfully concocted. They naturally were of the highest grade. Passed. The middle-grade trainee's expression was filled with admiration. It was no wonder that this person could be personally accompanied by Oyu Khan. No wonder he could concoct the green rainbow pills which were of the highest difficulty level. He did indeed have that ability. Oyu Khan's expression was incredibly dark. This was practically a slap to his face. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Next, I wish to continue testing for a middle-grade trainee." The middle-grade trainee was not qualified to hold the position of witness further. He immediately went off to make a report, and then 3 high-grade trainees came. "Greetings, Holy Sun." They first paid their respects to Oyu Khan. Oyu Khan waved them off. At present, he, too, was slightly curious where Ling Han's limits were. Then concoct the Heaven and Earth Unity pill, he spoke up. The 3 high-grade trainees froze at the same time. The Heaven and Earth Unity pill had belonged to the category of high-grade alchemical pills a very, very long time ago. However, afterwards, due to certain reasons, it was again categorized as a middle-grade alchemical pill, but this was enough proof of the difficulty level of this alchemical pill. Ling Han was testing for a middle-grade trainee, and you directly demanded that he concocted what could practically be considered a high-grade alchemical pill. Wasn't this just making it difficult for him? But they did not dare to say anything. The Lord Holy Sun had spoken, so who would dare draw calamity onto themselves? Thus, Ling Han began to concoct the Heaven and Earth Unity pill. The moment he began, these 3 high-grade trainees became enchanted, deeply impressed by Ling Han's movements. This really was a rookie. He was practically a veteran alchemist with how amazingly skilled he was. Passed. After assessing Ling Han's completed pill, the 3 high-grade trainees all gave it a high grade. Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "Let's continue with the test for a high-grade trainee." Trainees were trainees. Even if they were of the high grade, they could not possibly alert an alchemist. But the number of witnesses had increased from 3 to 10. Oyu Khan did not speak further from the sidelines. He had finally seen the facts. Ling Han indeed had great accomplishments in the area of alchemy. Forget it, what does it matter if you get authenticated as a high-grade trainee? In any case, you wouldn't be able to live for too many days more. Alchemist? What a joke. Even if a high-grade trainee wanted to ascend to this level, without over 100 million years of training, that was absolutely impossible. But looking at Ling Han's flame of life, he couldn't be over 10,000 years old, so how could that be possible? Without Ouyou Khan exerting pressure from the sidelines, the difficulty level of this test naturally dropped sharply. Ling Han could simply concoct any type of high-grade alchemical pill instead of one specific type. This naturally was just a matter of course for him. The alchemy chamber also had the effects of speeding up time. After merely one day, a high-grade alchemical pill was completed. Passed. The 10 high-grade trainees had long since been impressed by Ling Han's skill, and showed expressions of admiration without reservations. Their heated and maddened eyes made even Ling Han feel slightly discomfortable. "I'll continue with the test for an alchemist," Ling Han hurriedly said. When these words were spoken, a dead silence fell over the area. "Test for an alchemist? Hiss, you really are so ambitious. Do you know how many alchemists are there even in Alchemy City? 138,643. Though it was over 100,000, how big was Alchemy City? This was a 4-star city, and the population numbered in the millions and millions. Furthermore, these alchemists did not all originate from Alchemy City, but comprised about half the number in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. And even then it was just slightly over 130,000. From this, it was clear how high the requirements were for becoming an alchemist. What alchemist did not work earnestly a few 100 million, billion, or tens of billions of years as a high-grade trainee? Some were still holding the title of high-grade trainee even until death. Furthermore, this was the fate of the very large majority. If that was not the case, how could alchemists possess such a high status? That which was rare was dear, and it was the same for people. From a certain aspect, alchemists were even rarer than exquisitely beautiful women. "What is it?" "I can't," Ling Han asked smilingly. "You can take the test, but you will have to concoct celestial pills, which need the use of celestial medicine," a high-grade trainee said. "The pavilion does not provide any celestial medicine. You have to prepare your own." "No problem," Ling Han answered. Seeing how resolute Ling Han was, Ouyou Khan finally showed a hint of wariness. Could Ling Han really do it? No one was an idiot. If they did not have some amount of certainty, who would come to the alchemist pavilion and fail, be embarrassed, and lose their wealth in public like this? But to say Ling Han possessed the abilities of a 1-star alchemist. How could this be believed? The 10 high-grade trainees exchanged looks, and one of them said, "Fine." However, the alchemist test requires an alchemist to invigilate. They were not qualified to authenticate an alchemist. Ling Han nodded. The alchemist test would create a big commotion. Just think about it. How many alchemists were there in the whole Alchemy City? And those that could become alchemists would at least have to be in the severing mundane tier, but throughout such extended passage of time, there were actually only a total number of just over 130,000. Thus, when it was heard that someone was going to undergo the alchemist test, this naturally created a huge commotion. It was possible that this was the rise of a new star. Perhaps this someone was going to become a giant pillar in the future of Alchemy City. Who knew? To say nothing of alchemists being alerted, even a great many cultivation clans sent out representatives to observe the event. A new alchemist was worth recruiting. But when everyone found out that the person that was undergoing the alchemist test was Ling Han, they all had about the same thoughts. "You have got to be joking. You are a martial arts prodigy here, the man who has defeated Zhao Qingfeng while you yourself are inferior by 1 minor level, and now you actually went off to concoct alchemical pills, ignoring your proper occupation? Has your head been kicked by a donkey? It is not that being an alchemist is bad, but you can't put the cart before the horse. If you have so much energy, why aren't you spending it on cultivation? Fuck." Chapter 1881 Ling Han is going to concoct celestial pills. Chapter 1881 Ling Han is going to concoct celestial pills. When they found out this person was Ling Han, Everyone's feelings of anticipation instantly declined by half. Professionals were in charge of different aspects. There were limits to one's energy, and this was an incredibly realistic problem. Just how many years had you been alive for? Those with strong insight could very accurately make an assessment below 500 years. Then even if you had spent your life in the time cultivation chamber that even had the highest grade of time acceleration effects ever since birth, when all was said and done, that would only be 50,000 years. Becoming a one-star alchemist in 50,000 years. You've got to be joking, you must be crazy. But no matter what, a great prodigy of martial arts actually taking the alchemist test still incited the interest of the majority, and they watched from the sidelines. Furthermore, once the news spread out, it had even drawn the attention of a good number of holy sons and holy daughters. Some were qualified to contest for the position of chairperson, such as Lu Xianming, Zhao Bang, and Qin Guyu. The other holy sons and holy daughters knew that there was no hope for them to beat the competition, and had thus long since withdrawn from worldly matters, keeping an incredibly low profile. To say who was the very most stunned, that would have to be Lu Xianming. What did Ling Han mean? This question kept turning over and over in his mind. As a prodigy of martial arts, why did he want to become an alchemist? If Ling Han really became a one-star alchemist, the significance of this would be long-lasting and powerful. A one-star alchemist that had not exceeded 50,000 years in age. This was a super genius, which was even more stunning than Ling Han having defeated Zhao Qingfeng. After all, there were many martial arts prodigies. To say nothing of those farther away, merely Yang Xianlu alone was capable of suppressing a whole generation and becoming a supreme monarch. However, a one-star alchemist that had not exceeded 50,000 years in age was really something that hadn't even been heard of. This kind of prodigy would be fully supported by the Alchemy City, a new holy son. If he held the titles of both martial arts prodigy and alchemy prodigy, then what other holy son or holy daughter could contest with Ling Han for the position of future chairperson of Alchemy City? There was definitely no one that could match him, and he would be invincible. Lu Xianming felt as if there was thunder booming in his head. At this moment, he only had one thought: Ling Han definitely, absolutely could not succeed. Otherwise, he would be forced to stand on Ling Han's opposing side. He definitely could not possibly allow anyone to threaten his future position as chairperson. Involuntarily, he turned to look at Qin Guyu, Zhao Bang, and Oyu Khan. Coincidentally, these three people were also looking at each other, and they could all see a signal from each other's eyes. There definitely could not be another holy son, much less a freakish prodigy like Ling Han. However, most people did not have that thought. On the contrary, some were very expectant. If Ling Han could succeed, then with his skill in both alchemy and martial arts, he would definitely become a legendary character of Alchemy City. And thus, in such complicated and anticipatory circumstances, Ling Han entered into the alchemy chamber, taking the most important step for him in Alchemy City. He was naturally going to concoct the purple moon spirit suppression pill. Merely the time for concoction would be as long as 3 months. Thankfully, this alchemy chamber had time acceleration effects 100 times at that. Thus, if Ling Han could succeed, he would only need a single day as measured outside. In the eyes of everyone, all of Ling Han's movements had been sped up by 100 times. Hence, his movements were even smoother and faster, but even if they had been sped up by 100 times, his movements were still as smooth as water, causing everyone to feel as if they were enjoying a feast for the eyes. Exclamations of shock rang out in the surroundings. There was no lack of real alchemists here. As the saying went, laymen simply enjoyed the show, while connoisseurs recognized the artistry. Judging from Ling Han's movements, he indeed had the style of a veteran alchemist. This caused them to be incredibly shocked. Such a young alchemist's existence was really too inconceivable. It could only be said that there really were prodigies in this world, just that they all had not uncovered them previously. The expressions of Lu Xianming, Oyu Khan, and the others became gradually uglier. Ling Han had already begun pill concoction. Though this was the very most crucial step, a feeling of great foreboding already rose up in them. Who knew? This guy might really be able to succeed. They were all afraid. Though they were all holy sons and holy daughters, and in fact had reached the height of a 2-star alchemist. Compared with Ling Han's accomplishments, they would pale in color. There were many alchemists that were of a higher grade than them, so why was it that they were the holy sons and holy daughters? That was because they had the potential to charge up to 3 stars, 4 stars, or even 5 stars. But if Ling Han could become a 1-star alchemist while he was less than 50,000 years old, then his potential undoubtedly surpassed all others. This was a powerful enemy. The 4 holy sons and holy daughters looked at each other, and all of them felt an intense killing intent rise up in them. Even Lu Xianming was no exception. His heart had already hardened. In the outside world, 1 day's time passed very quickly, and in the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was also about to pass 100 days' time. In his hands, alchemy had become an art, exuding a kind of beauty to it. He suddenly struck the cauldron strongly. The 9 heavens flame flickered slightly, and the cauldron instantly exploded. He failed. Everyone was watching with captivation, and when they saw that the cauldron had abruptly exploded, they were naturally very disappointed. But that was fine. Being able to hold on for so long until the cauldron exploded, Ling Han would definitely be able to become a 1-star alchemist without having to try many more times. Such a young 1-star alchemist, and added with the halo of being a great prodigy of martial arts. What kind of notion was this? A new star, this was definitely a super rising star, and was worth being recruited at all costs. Lu Xianming and the others also breathed out sighs of relief, but they had also become more cautious. They definitely had to get rid of Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he had become a 1-star alchemist, or even a holy son, it would really be too difficult. However, everyone's expressions changed in the next second. Though the cauldron had shattered, 3 alchemical pills were dancing in the alchemy chamber. As if they had sprouted wings, they wanted to flee. He succeeded. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was really unexpected, and the expressions of Lu Xianming and the others also became incredibly ugly in an instant. They were aware that a frightening opponent would soon emerge. Ling Han opened his palm and grabbed the 3 soaring alchemical pills. With a surge of origin power, the 3 pills obediently stayed in his palm. He pushed the doors open and stepped out, tossing the alchemical pills to an alchemist, and smilingly said, "Please examine." Sure, a great many alchemists immediately gathered around. Not only were they successfully concocted, they are also medium grade. This young man, are you people sure that he is a martial arts prodigy? I have stayed at the level of 1-star alchemist for over 7 billion years, and have not concocted medium-grade celestial pills even now. I practically am an extreme idiot. All the alchemists chattered away, incredibly stunned. It was really not easy for an alchemist to emerge, what more this kind of rookie that had risen up so strongly. He was really too scary. This was practically starting from medium grade. Ling Han, an alchemy apprentice, walked over. He looked to be only 15 to 16 years old, but his real age would at least have to be over millions and millions of years. The flame of life could not deceive. Seeing him walk over, everyone bore expressions of seriousness. Even those alchemists were no exception, and they all separated, giving way for him. They were not revering this alchemy apprentice, but the person he represented. Alchemist Zi Cheng, you're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,